Lam tulba dalwara jinge labdoze, tulba yeje zo charora jinge labdoze. Dada zemje danje lo che zo ndora jinge labdoze, che lamdo ndora jinge labdoze. Lam tulba dalwara jinge labdoze, tulba yeje zo charora jinge labdoze. Dada zemje danje lo che zo ndora jinge labdoze, che lamdo ndora jinge labdoze. Lam tulba dalwara jinge labdoze, tulba yeje zo charora jinge labdoze. 다 방엔 청마라 자시 델릭 슈당 찹지도 데네 샘젠 탐지기 등도 조배 상지기 고방토고 디 제도다 다링 데네 가서다 잠바다 닝제당 창조의 샘 넘버 숨 고미아리 데네 데 곰기에 냠베기 다텔라 잠 닝제 창조의 샘 넘버 숨라 냠렌지기 냠베 삼바자체와 창조 샘게 근롱원도 당내 세라지.
Trashidele, everyone. Tonight we are going to meditate on loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta. So please listen the Dharma with vast motivation of bodhicitta, thinking that I'm going to practice loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta in order to benefit all sentient beings.
Tene da nga zo do zong ringi nang ne, tene pe nasok tenpa shebe ki liu di nang ne, pe shiva di da kapsu re. Tene pe shiva ki kapsu de da zo tene na nyingden chobo komja de kare se na, tene ganzo de jamba dang, nyingje dang, changjo ge sem sum de, tene gawa dang, changjo ge sem dang, namba shi di, tene komja re do, tene da de re re la nga zo kama nga re chobo chi komya.
So we are working on the sutra of wise and foolish, as you know, but we are still at the first chapter, which is called the chapter of presenting the various metaphors. And in that, out of this chapter, we are on the fourth metaphors, and the very essence of the fourth metaphor in this first chapter is the practice of loving kindness, compassion, joy, and bodhicitta. So we are going to do meditation on each of these for a few minutes.
Da jamse chenpo degi tene che nyambar che bala tene me dong chu ju jawa dune tene di nangla chongo re tene che bala sungpa re sungpa tene che bogi me dong tene tarik che ne tene da tangbo nga la che nanglo chi nga me na dong na chong ne si na che ragi ma re tene jamse la ya shuwa bowa dang tene jamse deki che di sungpa re da kare sungpa re tene jambi semne gompa ra cha xie dang chowe du xie bang nyingje chenpe semchen chop gun la nyingze chima sa kawa chenpo gompa ra cha chen lang dak dang tunpe che jangcho semki chap pa ni jangcho sempe che pa sene ta sungpa re jangcho sempe che pa ten sene tene da de sungne tene jebo ki tene tema tawdo yegi tine tene korangi bang kor tamje la tene di lobjong jejuk nyamlen jejuk tene de kongriki yang tene di nyamlen tone tene menang la chongbarin.
So in this chapter, in this history, the fourth metaphors, the great Brahmin said to the king, after the king dig the fire pit, which is full of amber, and the king requested to Brahma, before I jump into this fire pit, which is full of amber, please teach me first. Otherwise, if I die, then I won't get the Dharma. So at that very moment, then the Brahmin taught these two stanza, the 8 lines, which says, habituate the mind of loving kindness, and avoid the notion of anger and hatred, and protect all sentient beings with a great compassion, and shed tear of loving kindness for all, and meditate on the great joy, and to protect others just like oneself with the great bodhicitta is the conduct of bodhisattva. And this is what he taught. And then when the Brahmin taught this line, and king actually wrote it down and gave everyone to practice, and also he practiced that, and by practicing it, he jumped into the fire pit, which is full of embers.
Tene da de kadang jangwa yin norbe 되네 공소 다왜 최식이 감자양 되네 로추소 조아치네 최람도 조당 메조디 강라락 레버라스나 되네 잠닝제디 줄라게 메길라락 레버라스 뭐라 다 잠닝제 최람도 조아디 잠닝제 줄라게나 최람도 조아다 잠닝제 줄라마게나 최람도 마로와도 보지 다 되네로 보지 더보지 대연도 되네 더링 알아서 최람도 조이게 쳐도 되네 잠닝제 기 검자야.
Path may clarify blessing that Dharma may progress along the path. So, when His Holiness, this Gyawang Karmapa was teaching on the four Dharma of Khenpo recently, he said whether our Dharma may progress along the path or not depends on how much we have a practice on loving kindness and compassion. So if the loving kindness and compassion is taking root in your being, your mind, then whatever you do, the Dharma may progress along the path. Therefore, today, in order to make our Dharma progress along the path, we are going to practice on loving kindness and compassion.
최라 미비 잠바당 미바 메비 잠바선다 여숨드번서 디나네다 당당 알아도 망쇼다 레당 바바인다 되네다 심전라 미비 잠바디 고면
됐나 검대 사금으로 가가야를 달게 가운데 잠바고
건너고
어떤데 검게든 검실시에들다. So the first line in this teaching, which was taught by the Brahmin to king, said, habituate yourself with the mind of loving kindness. So when we are talking about the loving kindness, actually there are three classification of it, which we call the compassion focusing on sentient beings, the compassion focusing on Dharma, and the compassion without focal reference, or non-referential compassion, or you can also say compassion without any focus. So since we are just beginner, we are going to talk and meditate and practice the first one, which is the compassion focusing on sentient beings.
곰고야 좀전 더버지 거르잖아. 내가 알아도 태과 천백이 최디 다 최기 태과 천백이 최기 닝보디 더버지 때문에 장축이 셈래. 때문에 장축이 셈 양다고 곰버지 발라. 줄라게 버지 발라. 때문에 잠바당 닝지 등원도 저거고요래. 디 장축이 셈기 다 먼저 저거지기 차도요 바래. 대인들 되네 잠바 다 되네 가서 다 심질 남미비 잠바디 보면 다 대인들 다 검상 오마제나 다 건서 당보 되네 검라위기 체도 레라위기 체도는 되네 싸위기란 마 알라 되네 다 고축네 다 마라 데라 되네 강인고 류께봐 까와째봐 쏙짐봐 되네 지금 좀 말아서 베기 진전베기 거네 되네 잠바곰 데라 잠바 다 잠베기로 양 여고 지게 투바당 되네 데레 파타링 년센데절로 분ቸ데절로 곰 데라 여부 검선나 되네 파 김세저보 다 대대 타링으로 당 델레 여보게도 되네 링으로 당 타를 남게 타다님의 생년 탐제라 되네 잠바 게 로케도 바치 곰그고
And again, the reason why we need to practice or we need to meditate on loving kindness, or why we need to habituate ourselves with the idea of loving kindness, is because we are supposed to be practitioner of Mahayana Dharma, and the very essence of Mahayana Dharma is bodhicitta. And again, in order to make bodhicitta take place in our being, our mind, or in order to make bodhicitta, a genuine bodhicitta born in our mind, we must practice on loving kindness and compassion first. Otherwise, there is no way that we can practice genuinely on bodhicitta. Therefore, as a Mahayana practitioner, it is necessary for us to practice loving kindness and compassion first. And as I already said, there out of three division or classification of the loving kindness, we need to start from the first one, which we call loving kindness focusing on sentient beings. The reason why it is called is because our object of our loving kindness is sentient beings. That's why it's called the loving kindness focusing on sentient beings. And the way how you practice it is you have to start with someone who is the most kind to you. So usually we take our own mother of this life, because we always think the mother is the most kind person for us in this life. So in the teaching also it says that there are 4 different kind of kindness usually described. First, he says she gives out our body, and then she gives our life, and then she shows us how to be on this world. And then she doesn't mind to go through any hardship in order to help us. So these are the actual thought. But anyway, we just have to think how kind our mom is. Then that will make you easier to have genuine sense of compassion, love and compassion to your mom. Once you are convinced a little bit, and then you can extend furthermore, maybe your family members and your neighbor and your whole country, and then until the whole sentient beings, which are expand as the expanse of the sky, as many as the expanse of the sky. So once you can practice in that way, then we are doing pretty good.
Then 다 검정 오마디 다 잠베기 오르버지 검정 오마디 가르래서나 then 대화당 된들이 로디 then 잠베기 다 검정 오디 디래 then 디인데 다 라서서 로당 참바제네 다 당번에 then 잠바 셈매바 검tum나 then 남게 사당 냠베 셈진 셈매발라 잠바 대화당 된바 중노 냠베기 로게나 되네 잠바 세메는 되네 당번에 되게 마tum나 되네 공도 주바는 이제 당보 판마게 저벌라 되네 대화당 되나 지마롱 냠베기 로당 되네 디나신 되네 최종대로 소소게 로체라 바베 방네 되네 고면 남바디다 대화당 된데 디 대화직 톱나 대화직 되나 삼비게 로드 고메들다 잠바신세.
So again, when we say loving kindness, we have our own definition for that word. So loving kindness is actually the translation of jamba in Tibetan or maitri in Sanskrit. So the definition of this word in Tibetan is a mind that wants all sentient beings be happy. And this is the definition of the loving kindness. So when we say you meditate on loving kindness for your mom, that means you should have a mind that wants your mom be happy. And then our ultimate goal is something called immeasurable loving kindness. That is if you ask what is that, then that is if you can focus on the immeasurable sentient beings as your focus of your loving kindness, then that could be called immeasurable loving kindness, because the object of your loving kindness is immeasurable, is limitless. But somehow it is not easy for us as a beginner to start from that. Therefore, we should start more easier way. So just take your mom or someone who is very dear to you, and then think how wonderful it will be if she or he is always happy. And this is the definition. As I said, the definition of loving kindness in Buddhist term is a mind that wants other to be happy. So now we start our meditation in that way for 5 minutes.
다 니버 치강 니버디 시당 초위 뒤시 방세 다디 잠베기 미튼족 잠베기 갈다 다세나레 디나신 단닝 요네 닝제시로 닝제기 갈다는 양레 닝제기 미튼족양레 시당 공주 시디 디인드 시당 공주기 셈 당 되네 시당 공주기 주 강소 뒤시 잠지양 되네 주로 마게와 되네 방투가 제거래 그래서 시당 공주 뒤시.
And in this teaching, the second line says, avoid the notion of anger and hatred. So the anger and hatred are the actual opposite of loving kindness and compassion. And therefore, in order to practice genuinely the loving kindness and compassion, it is necessary for us to avoid or to give up the anger and hatred, and even you should not have any notion of this, which is the cause of the anger and hatred. So it says avoid the notion of hatred and anger, the second line.
되네 다 닝제 고면에다 닝제 침배 심진 좁 되는데 다 닝제 대양 되네 예와도 버제나 철람 심진람 미비 닝제 철람 미비 닝제 미바 메비 닝제 숨 유베나네다 가랑도단다 심진람 미비 닝제 고면이 되네 대양 되네 강소 다 당보 자위 말라저네 되네 닝제 고면도당 되네 바다링로 당네 달 남게 타다니 메시면 탐제라 되네 닝제기 로기토고 닝제기 찹토고 지 고면제라다.
And then the third line says, protect all sentient beings with great compassion. So again, same as loving kindness, there are three different kinds of compassion, which sometimes also translate taking sentient beings as focus. The compassion taking sentient beings as focus, which is the first. Usually I translate compassion focusing on sentient being. And then the second is exactly the same as the loving kindness, the classification. And the compassion focusing on Dharma, or compassion taking the Dharma as focus. And the last one, compassion without focus, or compassion beyond focus. And then now we are going to do the first one, the compassion focusing on sentient beings, or taking sentient beings as focus.
되네 닝제 침배 심진 좁세 다 닝제 침배를 되네 심진 함이 동엘리 좁아 다 닝제 검세들 다 검정 어마디 다 닝제기 뭐디 더버지 거르잖아 되네 동엘 진 심진 다 녀와라 차장기 동엘 이다올라 조금기 동엘 둔둘로 lumon culture chigla sikso balaso be dunge mela ke gana dunge la soba de tamje dungel dedak tamjelle jolne dene 강도 dungel dende nyong mago baji jungna sambegi le dungel dele choptumna nyambegi le dene 강도 kombadela dene 닝제 kom sedita kom zo ngomadi 동엘레 절대 동엘레 접대기 로 대고미아래도 근라 닝제 침마스학세들 다 잠바 있나야래 닝제 있나야래 되네 닝 타관네 되네 잠바다 닝제디 깨네 되네 라신기 밍네 침마다바당 류 요와 바부 요와당 류 다로라서바 대중화이나 되네 디 잠바 있나야 잠바 첨보 닝제 있나야 닝제 첨보인 그래서 어디 닝제 첨부 장배 첨부 세인 다 닝제 첨부는 덴바 세제 간대지 거고 그러던다 데드버지 거고 그래도 민니 치마사 도바는 류 버버여 도바지라 그다음에 양 닝제 체매 당 잠바 체매 세대다 디테일 가가래도 체매 세대 가래서는 좀 미버 다이 셈진 되는 다 매버 남게다는 뭐다 매버 체매버 jel라 되는 게토버 jel라 되는 체매세당 되는 챔버스야디 달로이 뉴슈기 톱라 쳔디 미기 쳔마 잡아라 잡아텔라 다 챔버스 되는 챔버당 담이기 예도 체매기 예도 되는 저지
And the third and fourth line says, protect all sentient beings with great compassion and shed tear for all. So what that means is, again, the compassion here, we have our own definition for compassion. Compassion is the translation of Nyingje in Tibetan or Karuna in Sanskrit. And then the definition of this word, compassion, is again a mind that wishes all sentient beings be free from suffering. And this is all what we're in Buddhist, when we say compassion, this is what it is. A mind that wants or that wish all sentient beings be free from suffering. Because as long as you are in samsara, you are not free from suffering. Therefore, we want everyone, all sentient beings, be free from their own suffering. For example, in hell realm, we usually say the extreme heat or extreme cold is the main suffering of hell realm, and extreme thirst or extreme hunger is the main suffering of hunger ghosts or preta and hungry ghosts, and being stupid and being used by others and being eaten by one another is the main suffering of the animal realm, and the being born and die is the main suffering of a human being, for example. So if you have a mind that wishes to be all these beings from their whatever suffering they are going through, is what we call compassion in Buddhism in general. And then second line, which says, shed tear for all of compassion is, again, this is what we call the great compassion. So when you practice, and if a genuine compassion is arisen in your mind, then you feel unbearable compassion, then you will have naturally tears in your eyes when you think about the suffering, or when you think about the suffering of others. And then not only that, and all the hair on your body will stand up and so forth. This will naturally happen if you have the genuine compassion for others. And this is what we call the great compassion. Again, we have something called immeasurable compassion or limitless compassion. That is little different than what we call the great compassion. So great compassion is, as I just told you, when you are really being convinced with a genuine mind of compassion for others, then you will have a tear in your eyes, and all the hairs on your body will stand up when you think about the suffering of others. And that is what we call the great compassion. And when we say limitless compassion, it depends on the object of your compassion. If you can provide your compassion for all sentient beings that are as many as the spans of sky or space, then that is what we call the limitless compassion, because the object of your compassion is limitless. And this is little different between the immeasurable compassion and the great compassion. So now we're going to do meditation on compassion again for 5 minutes. So now, before we thought how wonderful it will be if everybody can be happy. Now we should think how wonderful it will be if all sentient beings be free from suffering. And that is what we have to think about for the next 5 minutes.
대가서 semjen tamjen dungel da dewa dang dewi ju dang denbar ju ji dene jamba seme komba dene debu dewa dang di ju gewa dang denbar ju na tobar ju na ji marung nyamba de jamba dang da nipa de la semjen tamjen dungel dang dungel gi ju dang delwar ju ji debu dungel dang dungel di ju tene ledang nyamong tamje dang terwar juna ji marung nyamba de la tene nyingji ge lo de to nyingji komba.
When we practice and the recitation of this form immeasurable, we says, may all sentient beings possess the happiness and the causes of happiness. And this is what we are praying for, loving kindness. So happiness is result, and then causes happiness is virtuous action. So what we are saying here is not just may they have the result, but also may they possess the causes of result. So they will have more and more result. So we say, may all sentient beings possess the happiness and the causes of happiness. And second line, we again we recite like we say, may all sentient beings be separated from suffering and the causes of suffering. Again, same. Suffering is the result, and the causes of suffering is, of course, cause of the suffering, which are the non-virtuous action. So, if it is not sufficient for them to be separated from suffering once, if they are not separated from the causes of suffering, even they are separated from suffering for a while, there will be again more suffering for them. That's why it is necessary for them to be separated for both the result and causes, which are suffering and non-virtuous actions. So when we are doing this practice, a recitation of form measurable, we says that may all sentient beings possess this happiness and causes of happiness. This is loving kindness. And next we say, may all sentient beings be separated from suffering and the causes of suffering. This is what we are praying for the compassion.
Samjen
tamje dewa dan deve gyudan dembare gyurji dungha dan dunghar gi gyudan draware gyurji.
다 숨바디 가와 침보고 말해도 다 가와데 되네 주당 대본이라 가와고 말 되네 주 개왕군도 성몰라 되네 대부 대와 토바 대부 주 동엘당 되네 대부 대와 토바 대부라 가와고 마당 되네 양 대화 톱제기 주 개와 주 삭힌 다 진바당과 최점송과 서바고 막 검자발라 소베 되네 계획이 자와 두긴 대위기 주 계획 자와 두긴 될라 되네 주 대화 강도 주 대위 줄라 가고 막 다디.
And next is meditation on the great joy. It says meditation on great joy. So this is one of the four immeasurable thoughts. And when we say that the great joy, we should meditate on the both the result and the causes of great joy. So who are practicing the 10 virtues action is actually the causes of great joy, of course, and who are enjoying the great joy is the result of great joy. So we should meditate on both of them.
다디 디 준도 가와 고메데 가서 강서 때 개침번 살에 삼게도 가래래서나 때네 제부 대화 토ken 미 이제 다 랑레 냠마당 토와다 멤버가 되지네 대라 대화당 기부지 중나 대라 가와 고메데 베 갈래 가보지 수이나야 대라 타도다 마가와당 되네 강서 세상기 개개마도 가와 공연데 배 공부당 요요래도 디인데 되네 디 준도 되네 가와 공연데 기침번 사람.
So I think it is very important for us as a Dharma practitioner to meditate on this joy as a daily practice, because usually from the mundane point of view, when you see somebody is enjoying happiness, you don't feel good. You usually have kind of jealousy rather than having joy in yourself. So therefore, we have to habituate ourselves and we have to train ourselves how to be happy at others' happiness. So when somebody is enjoying the result of this great joy, which is actually the joy, the happiness, then we should also be happy with them rather than being jealousy. Therefore, I think it is very important for us to practice this as a daily practice to be a good practitioner.
잠바 곰네 대화당 댐비 셈젠라 가와곰 닝지 곰네 동엘당 델웨 셈젠라 되네 가와곰 되네 곰지.
So also you can meditate on the joy after meditating on loving kindness and compassion. For example, when you are meditating on loving kindness, then you are actually focusing how wonderful it will be if everybody can be happy. So when they are happy, then why there's no reason for us not to be happy. So therefore, you should be happy and meditate on the happiness after all sentient beings become happy. And again, same for the compassion also. When you are meditating on compassion, you are meditating, wishing that, thinking how wonderful it will be if everybody can be separated from suffering or free from suffering. Then, when they are free from suffering, then they are happy. So then when they are happy, then there's no reason for you not to be happy. Therefore, after you meditate on the compassion, again you can do the meditation on joy. So now we're going to do 3 minutes for this, because time is limited.
kawachi moko marja shen lang dag dang tun bi che changcho semgi japa ni changcho sembi chebar den sen dan da shen lang dag dang tun bi che sen da deso jamba dang ninji komya deso da kangso le labo chabo che na 다 랑라 다당 튠비체 랑라 페샹 다 랑게 류라 페랑라 셴라 네바 마지지세로 데네 랑라 둥엘 메데바 나신 심젠 탐제라 둥엘 데디요 마리 삼네 둥엘랑 절데기 닝제당 데네 랑라 데와 간데지 유나야 대바당 고기 여바 나신 심젠 탐제라 대와디 고기 삼네 데네 랑라 페샹네 잠바다니 곰 센서레 튠비추 장조심 기자바니 데네 데 다비 로당 덴베기 장조기 셈기 데네 셴동엘레 잡도바이나 데네 장조심베기 최바당 덴바 장조심베기 민당 튠바이 데도자.
The next three lines in this teaching that was taught by the Brahmin to king says, to protect others with bodhicitta just like oneself is the conduct of bodhicitta, of bodhisattva. So what it means is, as we said, taking example one's own body, don't harm others. So if you harm yourself, you can feel, you can experience the suffering just like that. If you harm any other living beings, then they experience the suffering. For like that, so knowing how happy you are when you are free from suffering, think others in that way also, how wonderful it will be if they can be free from suffering. And then how happy you are when you are happy, when you have everything. Then think how wonderful it will be others as just as yourself, how wonderful it will be for them if they can get what they want and they can be happy all the time. And if you can conduct this way in daily practices, thinking others as equally as yourself and wishing others to be free from suffering and wishing others to be free, happy all the time, and then that means you are protecting them with the bodhicitta, and that is the conduct of bodhisattva. Okay, that's all for tonight. We have completed the 8-line teaching that was taught by the Brahmin. Now we're going to do the practice of Sakya Dolma. Oh, my Namkhada Nyambe Sanje Tamje Lama Sangye Rinpo Chalai Kyasoi Jo Sangye Chodan Gendo Namlai Kyasoi Jo Lama Yedam Kandu Solai Kyasoi Jo Ransel Donsai Chikye Kolai Kyasoi Che Voya Maya Namkhada Nyambe Sanje Tamje Lama Sangye Rinpo Chalai Kyasoi Jo Sangye Chodan Gendo Namlai Kyasoi Jo Lama Yedam Kandu Solai Kyasoi Jo Ransel Donsai Chikye Kolai Kyasoi Che Maya Namkhada Nyambe Sanje Tamje Lama Sangye Rinpo Chalai Kyasoi Jo Sangye Chodan Gendo Namlai Kyasoi Jo Lama Yedam Kandu Solai Kyasoi Jo Ransel Donsai Chikye Kolai Kyasoi Che Man Bemo 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 Oman Tendane da jombe sevaso semje yemen dewe namgu digden kamso jomvaraya mai gyuraji chedra shemen tebe sejai Gece la lüzen drazebe Soro nege doyma jenyeba Jiden kamso yoraya mai gürece Şevda şence kayna çıbayendar Nege mezal tebe drazebe Nece bayda daya berem zoyge Lüce gala ne baraya may görece Ne begere donda geceda Lobra yedro somya trojoeda Shibya zaye ne la sobaye Lujin gala sevaraya may gyuraji Luzem devaya maya luyen trojebe Jungye troebe doyma jenyeba Malo jenyen daye doye dembayda Seredeme dege dembarayyo Lama kuncho songe tojeda Kandu çekyön soymeye nöydöydä Lende loya meyebeden dövgi Moya mala da zeyen barayjo Lama kuncho songe tojeda Kandu çekyön soymeye nöydöydä Lende loya meyebeden dövgi Moya mala da zeyen barayjo Lama kuncho songe tojeda Kandu çekyön soymeye nöydöydä Lende loya meyebeden dövgi Moya mala da zeyen barayjo Longevity prayer of His Holiness Karmapa and the long-lasting Dharma prayer. Oin jagun nije ranso karma ba jagun tene jido karma ba jagun tunso wangre karma Ugyen Tenzin tene so si shi banjira malo jongwe shi tube tenpa yure neba Tenzin jibe kiwa tamba na banje gigi yure shabden so chunga chenpo raye ne songa samje thage kalpa chewa samye chodun zeje shu. Our usual dedication and the auspicious prayer. Sonam deye tamje sewaye thone nyebe rana pamje kega naje balaye robaye sibe sole rowan rovaray joy jamala bavoy chidray kemba da konda sambo teya dejen de teda genge jeso dalo gewa deda tamje rabdo Sangye kusum nyebe chelam dan chunye mengyur debe chelam gende meche debe chelam ge chidra mawa malon rubaray shon dushe le jay jare tene karamaya baden dembe nyemboende Shodaray Gwenjay Chabje Gemeche Daboy Rampan Perven Next Saturday and again next Saturday there will be no teaching because Mahakala Puja and Losar will be gone on, and then next there will be teaching. after two from now the third Saturday we will teach again. Okay, last one.
Good night.